I am going to tell you something that every German soldier who fought Americans said. Every single one of us. Different units, different fronts, different years. Men who fought in North Africa said it. Men who fought in Normandy said it. Men who fought in the Ardennes said it. Men who ended up in the cages said it to each other when the guards were not listening. We all said the same thing. But before I tell you what it was, I need to tell you about a man named Klaus Heinemann. Because Klaus is the reason I know this was not just me. Klaus is the reason I know this was all of us. And what Klaus said to me in the cage at Bad Kreuznach in the winter of 1945, I will come back to that, but not yet. You need to understand what happened before the cage first. My name is Werner Brandt. I grew up in Freiburg im Breisgau. My father was a clockmaker. My mother taught piano to the neighborhood children every Saturday morning, and the sound of badly played scales coming through the ceiling of my father's workshop was the background noise of my entire childhood. I was 20 years old when they put me in a uniform in 1943. 22 when an American soldier pointed a rifle at my chest outside a farmhouse in the Hürtgen Forest in November 1944, and I made the decision that I am going to tell you about today. I need to tell you about the Hürtgen Forest before I tell you about the decision, because the Hürtgen Forest is where I understood something about the Americans that nobody had prepared me for. And understanding it is what made the decision possible. We had been told things about the Americans, specific things. The propaganda was specific and consistent and delivered with the confidence of people who believed it completely. We were told the Americans were soft. We were told they were undisciplined. We were told they fought for money and comfort and would break when the fighting became serious because they had no ideological conviction to sustain them through the hard parts. We were told a German soldier, motivated by love of the fatherland, would always outlast an American soldier motivated by his paycheck. I want to be precise about something. I am not telling you we were stupid to believe this. I am telling you we had no information that contradicted it and considerable information that supported it. North Africa had been mixed. Italy had been mixed. But the men telling us these things had fought the Americans, and they said, soft, undisciplined, they break. Then I went to the Hürtgen Forest, and I stopped believing every single thing I had been told. The Hürtgen Forest is approximately 50 square kilometers of dense pine forest on the German-Belgian border. In the autumn and winter of 1944, the Americans fought through it for 4 months. I was there for 6 weeks of those 4 months. And I want to tell you what I saw the Americans do in those 6 weeks. Because what I saw is the direct cause of what happened outside the farmhouse, and what happened in the cage, and what every German soldier said when he finally said it out loud. The Americans attacked into the forest, knowing they were going to take enormous casualties. The trees broke the artillery shells above the soldiers' heads, sending shrapnel downward. There was no cover that protected you from above, and no cover that protected you from the sides simultaneously. The Americans knew this before they went in. They went in anyway. Wave after wave of them, taking ground by meters, losing men by hundreds. We had positions in that forest that I was certain were impregnable. We had prepared them over weeks, overlapping fields of fire, deep bunkers, cleared lanes. The Americans found every single position and reduced it. Not quickly, not easily. They paid an enormous price for every meter. But they kept coming, and they kept paying, and eventually, always eventually, they were through. I want to tell you specifically about one American soldier I saw in the Hürtgen Forest, because this specific soldier is the reason I understood what I was dealing with before I ever reached the farmhouse. We were defending a tree line. The Americans had been attacking all morning, and we had stopped 3 waves. There was a 4th wave, and this wave came with a single American soldier 30 meters ahead of the rest. Not an officer leading them, just a soldier who had gotten ahead somehow, running directly at our position without any cover whatsoever. He was hit. He went down. He got back up. He was hit again. He went down again. He got back up again and kept running. He did not reach us. The 3rd time he went down, he did not get back up. But the image of him getting up the 2nd time is something I have never lost. A man who had been shot once, getting up and running toward the thing that shot him. That image is what I thought about outside the farmhouse in November 1944, when the American soldier pointed his rifle at my chest and I made the decision. I was separated from my unit. The Hürtgen had broken the coherence of everything by November. Units were fragmented, communication was unreliable, men were operating in small groups, trying to find their formations or find a defensible position. I had 3 men with me. We had been moving for 2 days. We were exhausted and cold in the specific way that the Hürtgen made men cold. Not just temperature, the cold of a place that had been fought over so many times that the ground itself seemed to have given up warmth permanently. We came around a farmhouse, and an American soldier was standing at the corner of it. He was as surprised as we were. For a moment nobody moved. Then his rifle came up, and I looked at the rifle and I looked at his face, and I thought about the man who got up twice in the tree line, and I made a decision. I raised my hands. My 3 men looked at me. I did not look back at them. I kept my eyes on the American and my hands up, and after a moment my 3 men raised their hands too. The American, he could not have been more than 19 years old, a boy from somewhere in America who had never imagined he would be standing outside a farmhouse in a German forest in November, holding a rifle on 4 German soldiers. He did not shoot us. He stood there for a moment with his rifle up, and then he did something I was not prepared for. He lowered the rifle slightly, and he said something in English that I did not understand. And then he gestured with the rifle, not a threatening gesture, a directional gesture. That way, move that way. He walked us to a collection point. It took about 40 minutes. It was cold and quiet, and he walked behind us the whole way, and he did not touch us, and he did not threaten us. And when we arrived at the collection point, and there were other Americans there, he said something to one of them. I did not understand the words, and that American gave me a cigarette. I had not had a cigarette in 11 days. Now I need to tell you about Klaus Heinemann and the cage, because the cage is where I found out this was not just my experience. Bad Kreuznach, the Rheinwiesenlager, the open field camps the Americans built along the Rhine to hold German POWs in the final months of the war. Hundreds of thousands of men, cold, not enough food. The conditions were not good. I am not going to pretend the conditions were good because they were not. But Klaus Heinemann was in the cage. Klaus had fought in North Africa with the Afrika Korps. He had been taken prisoner in Tunisia in 1943 and spent a year in an American POW camp in the United States before being returned to Germany. An extraordinary thing, being returned to Germany to fight again, but that is what happened. Klaus had more experience of Americans than almost any German soldier I knew. I found him in the cage because I heard him talking to a group of men, and I heard him say, "the thing," the exact thing, the thing I had been thinking since the farmhouse. I pushed through the group and I said, "You too?" He looked at me. He said, "Every single one of us." I said, "What is it about them?" And Klaus said something that I have thought about for 75 years, and that I believe is the most accurate military observation I have ever heard from any soldier of any army. He said, "They do not fight because they are told to. They fight because they decided to." And a man who has decided to fight is a completely different thing from a man who has been ordered to fight. You cannot break the first kind the way you can break the second kind. We were the second kind. They were the first kind. That is what every German soldier who fought Americans eventually understood. And that is what nobody in Berlin ever understood. And that is why we are in this cage. I want to tell you the thing Klaus said after that. The specific thing, because it is the thing I have been building toward for this entire story, and it is the thing I have never said out loud to anyone who was not in that cage. He said, "Hans, the worst part is not that they beat us. The worst part is that by the end I was glad they were winning. Because a man who fights because he decided to is fighting for something real. And I had not been fighting for something real for a very long time." I did not say anything. I took out the last of the cigarettes I had been given at the collection point. I had been rationing them across weeks, and I gave one to Klaus. He looked at it for a moment. Then he said, "Where did you get an American cigarette?" I told him about the farmhouse, about the boy from somewhere in America who was 19 years old and walked 4 German soldiers to a collection point and told another American to give the prisoners a cigarette. Klaus nodded slowly. He said, "That is exactly what I mean." I got home in 1946. My father's clock shop was still standing. My mother was still alive. The Saturday piano lessons had resumed. Different children, same badly played scales coming through the ceiling. I never found Klaus after the war. I looked for him for many years. I do not know if he made it home. I hope he did. Because the thing Klaus said in that cage, the thing about fighting for something real, is the thing that every German soldier who fought Americans eventually said in one form or another. It is the thing that nobody who planned the war ever understood. And understanding it did not save us. But it was honest. And by the time we were in that cage, honesty was the only thing any of us had left. The boy from somewhere in America who gave me a cigarette outside a farmhouse in the Hürtgen Forest in November 1944. I have thought about him many times. I do not know his name. I do not know what happened to him. I do not know if he made it home. I hope he did too.